In this video, we're going to be talking about what trademark you should register first, your brand name or your logo. Ready? Let's do this. Hey there, welcome to the video. I'm Jim Hart from Hawthorn Law, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing if you're an entrepreneur who's looking for legal tips on how to protect your business and your brand. Now, as I mentioned before, today I'm going to be sharing some of the legal factors you should be considering when you're trying to decide whether to register the trademark for your business name or your logo. And then we're also going to talk about which I think you should register first. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, before we get too far into this, I think it's really important to talk about what a trademark actually is, because this is something that a lot of people find very confusing and really don't understand, especially people that are running businesses and trying to make sure their intellectual property is protected. Now, a trademark is what is considered a source identifier. That means that when you see a trademark in the marketplace, it identifies the source of goods or services that are somehow attached to that trademark. And when you register your trademarks at a federal level, that gives you legal protection, meaning that nobody else, no other business, can use the same or even a similar trademark in the marketplace in connection with the same goods or services that you are selling. And sometimes in connection with even somewhat related goods or services to what you're selling. They don't have to be exactly identical. Your trademarks could be words, they could be logos, they could be slogans, they could be product names, they could be colors, they could even be sounds or smells. So let's discuss the different types of trademarks that you can actually register, because this is very important. And again, this is something that a lot of people find confusing. There are three basic types of trademarks that most people can register. We're going to forget about sounds and we're going to forget about colors for right now and scents for right now, because most people don't need to worry about that. And there's only a handful of those trademarks registered anyway. So we have your business name, we have your logo, and then we have what's called a composite mark, which we're going to get into here in just a minute. So let's start with your business name. This can also be called a standard word or character mark. A standard word mark is going to protect the words that you use in connection with your trademark. It's not going to protect any design elements. It's not going to protect any colors. It's not going to protect anything else, just literally the words that you use in your trademark. After you register your word mark, you can change the colors, you can change the fonts, you can change any design elements that might be used in connection with that, and you have pretty broad protection over how you're going to use those words in your marketing and your advertising, and how you're going to identify your goods or services in the marketplace. And when you register your word mark, nobody else can use your words or your trademark, as I mentioned before, in connection with the same or even similar goods or services in the marketplace. So this is very important. The second type of trademark that you could potentially register is what's called a design mark, and this is what we're going to be talking about when referring to your logo. Now, when you register your logo, that can be an artistic design, it can be words, it can be all sorts of different things that you might include in your logo, but what we're really protecting is the design of your trademark, and the words can be part of that, but the design is what's really important and why we're focusing on that. If you only want to protect the words, then the basic word mark is going to be sufficient. But if you have very unique design elements that you want to make sure are protected, then that's something that you can use in the design mark. A design mark is a great thing to register if your name may be overly descriptive and not capable of protection as a word mark alone. But because you've added those design elements, then in that case, you may be afforded protection on the principal register when you otherwise would not. And finally, the third one I want to talk about is a composite mark. A composite mark is a design mark and a word mark all wrapped into one. Now, I mentioned before with the design mark that it could include words. In its true sense, a design mark is really going to be just the design that you're using in connection with your trademark. So, for example, the Nike swoosh would be a great example of a design mark. The Target logo would be a good example of a design mark. The Apple logo would be a great example of a design mark. They don't include any words in the design. Now, when we start to talk about composite marks, we're talking about logos or designs that also include words in them. So really what you're protecting now is the words as well as the design elements in that mark. Regardless of which application you decide to file, whether you're going to go for a word mark, a design mark, or a combination of both in a composite mark, the standard of review for the trademark office or the examining attorney that's assigned to your file is going to be the same. They're going to be looking at your mark as a whole and deciding whether or not your mark is deceptively similar or likely to cause confusion with an existing trademark registration or an existing pending trademark application. Before we talk about each one of these in particular and which one I think you should focus on for your business, let's go through each of these in a little bit more detail. But before I do that, I need to get a sip of coffee. Today I'm using one of my son's pictures as my mug. It's late. This is my third cup of coffee for the day, believe it or not, but here we go. I feel a little bit better now. Ready to get back to trademarks? Let's do it. When you're trying to decide whether or not you should go with your name or your logo, here's what you need to know about trademarking your business name. When you trademark your business name, you're trademarking, as I mentioned before, the words alone. You're only registering the words. You're not receiving protection for the way those words are used, for the way they're designed, the font that's being used in connection with them, the colors that's being used in connection with them. You're merely receiving protection for the word mark alone. And this is really a great option because if you think about it, when most people are talking about a business, they're talking about the name of the business. This is the best identifier of what your brand does in the marketplace. Now, I do have some clients who like to focus on logos first. And the reason for that is because the logo is what's going to identify them in the marketplace. So consider if you have a retail business where you're going to have a logo plastered on the sign on the side of the highway to let people know that if they pull over and exit, they will have access to your goods or services. That might be an instance where a logo is a really smart option to register because you want to make sure people identify that logo. But for most people, I'd say 95% of people, the name of your business is how people are going to be talking about you in connection with your goods and services. And not only does this ensure that you receive exclusivity in your particular industry for the name that you chose for your brand, the word mark is going to offer you the broadest level of protection. So if it comes down to registering one or the other, I typically will tell my clients to go with the word mark first because it's going to give them the most protection and it's going to give them the most bang for their buck, especially if they have limited resources to register their trademarks. So a word mark is going to be ideal for businesses that are growing and expanding and want to make sure that their name is protected from competitors, and they also want to make sure that they're not infringing on somebody else that might have a similar name to them. So let's talk next about trademarking your logo. When you're trademarking a logo, you're protecting the specific design that's associated with that logo. Now, in this case, it could include fonts, it could include colors, it could include graphical elements that are used in connection with that design. If your logo contains words, the trademark will protect the words as well as the design. And when an examining attorney is looking at your trademark to determine whether or not you're infringing on somebody else's pre-existing registration, they're going to be looking at your trademark design in total, which includes the design elements and the literal elements of the mark. Now, you can disclaim colors when you file a design trademark application, but in general, a design mark is going to give you less protection than a word mark because if you decide to change your design sometime in the future, then you're going to have to file a brand new trademark application to receive those protections. But again, if your logo is a strong part of your brand identity, then it may be something you definitely want to consider. Now, when you're trying to decide, should I register one or the other, the answer is it depends. And I would strongly encourage you to talk with an attorney about these issues and walk through it with them to see what they have to say. This is something we do for clients all the time. I'll include a link down below to schedule a call with my office. So if you have the budget to do both, then I highly recommend you do both. But if you have the budget to do one or the other, then the answer is really going to be it depends on your personal situation, but typically a word mark is going to be the stronger choice because it's going to give you a broader level of protection. And if you decide to change your logo at some point in the future, you just have to refile a trademark for that new logo at that point anyway. And if you think about it, a lot of times businesses will change their logo over time to update it with the times, to refresh their image, different things like that. It's very common for businesses to change their logo. It is less common for a business to change their name. But in an ideal situation, you're going to register both. But if your legal budget does not warrant that, then the name is probably going to be the one you want to start with. Regardless of which you decide to move forward with first, a comprehensive trademark search is going to be really important to make sure that your name or your logo is not something that is currently in use by another business or that is substantially similar or likely to cause confusion with the logo or name of another business that's already has a trademark registration or even a pending trademark application. Obviously, consulting with a trademark attorney is going to be a really strong option in this situation. And I have a resource down below that talks more about trademarks and the things that you need to be aware of when you're registering your trademarks. If you want to go ahead and click the link down below, you can get signed up for our DIY trademark guide. Thank you so much for watching today, folks. Here's another video that talks more about trademarks and things you need to know. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.